Hello and welcome to Woman Crush Wines Day, a series where I drink wine and talk about women I like. The second annual Halloween Woman Crush is one of my favorite women that has ever worked at the Disney company, Leota Toombs Thomas. Thank you, by the way, for voting for her. I will preface this video by saying that there is not a lot of detailed information about Leota, but what I did find was still very, very interesting, especially to someone like me, who is obsessed with Disney and the Haunted Mansion, and I'll get to why later. Leota Ann Wharton was born on August 9th, 1925 in the greater Los Angeles area from what I could find. I couldn't find anything about her childhood or what her home life was like before she was a teenager, basically. But what I did find was that she started working at Disney in 1940 when she was about 16. Man, just living the dream. I don't know if she graduated high school early or if she dropped out to take the job at Disney, but in either case, it worked out for her. When she started at Disney, Leota worked in the ink and paint department, which was almost exclusively women. Maybe another day I'll do a whole video about the ink and paint women because they were just so immensely important to the success of Disney and Disney movies especially, and a lot of them became not only animators during World War II, but also Imagineers later on. Leota was one of them. In this new position, Leota met Harvey Toombs, who was already an animator that had worked on movies like Sleeping Beauty, Pinocchio, Cinderella, and Peter Pan. They fell in love over Disney movies, which is honestly my dream, and they got married in 1947. I couldn't find any specific dates for Harvey and Leota's daughters' birthdays, but like most women did in the 50s, Leota left Disney to raise their daughters. Leota only spent something like a decade at home before returning to the Disney company in 1962, this time joining WED Enterprises, which is now known as Walt Disney Imagineers. Soon after returning to the Disney company, Toombs started working on essential character design for the 1964-65 World's Fair. Of course, that's the very famous World's Fair where Disney showcased things like It's a Small World and Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln. So she worked on both of those, along with people like Alice Davis, Harriet Burns, Raleigh Crump, Mark Davis, all of my favorite people. So around the same time, she was working on the Tiki Room at Disneyland with Harriet Burns, who was the first woman hired into WED Enterprises. They put individual little feathers into the birds for the Tiki Room. And finally, we've made it to the part that's relevant for Halloween. The Haunted Mansion as a concept predates WED Enterprises, and possibly even Leota becoming an animator. Like, Walt really wanted a family-friendly, spoopy ride. Originally, the ride was supposed to be in operation by 1963, 8 years after Disneyland first opened. But because most of the WED Enterprise people were working on attractions for the World's Fair, the production for Haunted Mansion pretty much came to a halt, and the premiere date was moved back to 1969. One of the rooms WED Enterprises planned was a seance room where a floating head and a crystal ball called forth spirits from beyond. Harriet Burns was actually slated to be the model for Madame Leota, who probably at the time did not have a name or had a very different name, given who we're talking about. For whatever reason, Raleigh Crump and Yale Gracie, for whom Master Gracie is named, decided that Harriet's features just weren't exactly what they were looking for, so Gracie went to Leota. Leota basically said in some kind of interview later that her eyes were the perfect distance apart for the projection to work. And when Crump and Gracie asked her to get all done up as a ghoulish medium, Leota basically did it because it sounded like it was fun. A life cast of her face was made so that Crump and Gracie would have a model to project the image of her own face onto in the crystal ball. Then they filmed her from the neck up reciting the lines that Eleanor Audley, the voice of Maleficent and Lady Tremaine, spoke. Also, you know the little bride that's like right over the archway as you're just about to get off the ride that tells you to hurry back and don't forget to bring your death certificate? That's Leota. That's her voice, that's her face, it's Leota. Again, there aren't a lot of very specific details about Leota and her family, but from what I found, I think she and Harvey were married until he passed away in 1968. In 1971, Leota moved to Florida to work on the Florida Project, of course. She led the team that would oversee shows and attractions, and from what I read, there are rumors that she would like go out into the Jungle Cruise in like chest-high water just to move the animals around, basically. I mean, that was her job, but also that's really cool. As she was working on the Jungle Cruise, she met Hugh Thomas, who was working for the landscaping company that had been hired for the Florida Project. They fell in love, got married, and continued to live in Orlando as Leota continued to work on Walt Disney World. All of her husbands are from Disney. By 1979, her work at Walt Disney World was complete, so Leota and Hugh moved back to California, where she continued to work as an Imagineer. She trained new Imagineers in what she did, which is essentially set and character design. The couple also started a ceramics company, which they found a lot of success in, because they were both artists. According to Hugh's sister, her brother and Leota were married until a few years before she passed away. And again, no details, so I could not find when or why they divorced and if they did. Either way, Leota passed away from cancer on December 21st, 1991. In 2001, Leota got two updates. Leota Toombs, the person, was given a commemorative gravestone in the queue at the Haunted Mansion in Walt Disney World, which is fantastic. It blinks. Leota, the character, got a small update at Disneyland. 2001 was the first year that they wanted to do the Haunted Mansion Holiday, which is an overlay where they place Nightmare Before Christmas characters on the Haunted Mansion. Imagineers wanted to update Leota's dialogue mostly, but also a little bit of the technology, so they brought in Kim Irvine, Leota's daughter, who apparently has almost identical facial features to her mother, so they got to keep the look of Leota, but just update what she was saying for the overlay. That's so freaking cool. Did I mention that Kim is also an Imagineer still? The first D23 Expo was held in 2009, 18 years after Leota's passing. Other Disney legends had been inducted to the lineup before that, but what's special about Leota is that she was inducted at the first D23 Expo, and that her daughters, Lonnie and Kim, were there to accept the award for her. What a Disney family. Part of the special thing about going to Disney, especially Disneyland, is seeing exactly what Walt touched and what he envisioned. And you get to see that with a lot of the other WED Enterprise people as well, even if you don't realize it. Leota touched a lot of the things that you get to experience as a Disney guest. Let me just say that Leota was so cool. I cried reading about her, and it's all your fault, but thank you. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. In the comments below, let me know what your favorite thing about Leota Toombs was, or if you have any other Disney ladies you'd like me to talk about, go ahead and leave their names in the comments as well. If you're not already subscribed to The Princess and the Scrivener, please do so down below, especially if you'd like to see more videos on Disney, intersectional feminism, pop culture critiques, Woman Crush Wednesday, and more. The Scrivener will see you next week. Isn't her name so cool? Toombs. Leota Toombs. Do you know who I would have killed to work at Disney when I was 16? Probably nobody, because I don't really like murder, but when I was 16 I really wanted to work at Disney.